Hi, folks. We're going to talk today with Fred Van Loo about restorative justice. We're also going to talk with Josh Mandelbaum with the Environmental Law and Policy Center about renewable energy. And first, we're going to talk a little bit about marching. You know, I've been talking about this march across the country for climate action, modeling it after the Great Peace March, but there are a whole bunch of other models being thrown my way as worthy of examination, including a big event involving a march just this month, 100 years ago in Washington, D.C., on behalf of the women's suffrage movement.
This is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
This moment of silence brought to you by Tally's Restaurant Bar and Catering, home of Des Moines' premier rooftop dining experience. Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant Bar and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
On March 28th, Equal Justice After Hours is Iowa Legal Aid's annual fundraiser that helps provide access to justice for low-income Iowans. The event includes a reception and program at the Temple for the Performing Arts in Des Moines. It also includes remarks by Georgetown University law professor Peter Edelman and the induction of Robert Oberbilly into the Iowa Legal Aid Hall of Fame. Tickets start at $50 and sponsorship opportunities are available. Contact Terry Bennett at tbennett@iowalaw.org. That's tbennett@iowalaw.org.
Ludwig van Beethoven here. I used to be so tired all the time, not from composing and playing, but from moving my piano. But now I feel so much better. I call S&P Piano and they will bring my piano anywhere. They also sell and rent pianos, used ones, new ones. You get the idea.
Call S&P Piano right away at 208-6453. That's 208-6453.
S&P Piano.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That behind me, okay. You know for sure that that's not the state capitol today. In fact, it's got scaffolding on it. It's an old picture. Okay, give me a break. Thank you, Brother Trucker, for kicking the show off. And thank you to Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club for sponsoring this program. Also, thank you to Gateway Market for their support during this segment of our show. I want to thank Maureen McHugh with Physicians for Social Responsibility for sending me an interesting link relevant to marching. This is a story that goes back to March 3rd of 1913, almost exactly 100 years ago. And I'm glancing off to the side here because I do not have my trusty computer with me today. I've got to look at this old dinosaur of a machine here that Maddie is stuck in front of me. But it's about a story that I'm not familiar that I probably should be, that we probably all should be. You know, the women's suffrage movement apparently, you know, it had been going on since 1848. It had been moving forward for a long time, but, you know, you get to the early 1900s and it appeared to stall out. And, you know, there were similar movements around the world. And we forget how long it takes for a movement to actually accomplish change. 1848. And it wasn't until over 60 years later that, almost 70 years later, that the women's right to vote was actually secured. And again, things had stalled out, but 5,000 people descended, 5,000 women, mostly, and maybe some supporters of the male gender, I'm not sure, descended upon Washington, D.C. on March 3rd of 1913. 5,000. It's a big march, especially since back at that time, women were considered inappropriate, even maybe transgressing the law, maybe, and according to this article, presenting something akin to prostitution to merely expose yourself in the public eye and to make a scene, to act out, so to speak. That was a major no-no. But over 5,000 showed up. Woodrow Wilson apparently was also arriving in Washington, D.C. that same day by train, and he was not greeted in the way that he's used to being greeted. The mobs of people apparently were elsewhere. They were watching this parade of 5,000 women demanding the right to vote. Now, you see, in the years leading up to this march, again, the suffrage movement had been on life support, and again, nothing relevant to substantial legislation had been passed by the U.S. Congress on the suffrage issue for many years. And folks who were involved in the struggle were kind of disappointed, disenchanted. And, you know, there was, you know, but as often happens, you know, movements are like the seasons. There's moments of drama, and then things kind of settle down. You've got calm, clear weather. And in the case of a movement, you get frustrated when you have calm, clear moments. But, you know, that's the nature of the beast. Everything is organic. Everything resembles life, including movements themselves. So this was a big moment because things had been kind of just hanging in the air. Nothing was really moving. So this march really captured people's attention. It was huge. Leading the parade, again, this is March 3rd, 1913, almost exactly 100 years ago. 100 years ago, Sunday. Leading this parade was a woman named Inez Mulholland, and she was decked out in a beautiful white gown, riding a white horse. Not quite sure what that meant back then, but there was this diverse group of marchers, women who were laborers. I don't imagine there were too many back then, but those who were included in this parade. There were women professionals, immigrants, and as I suspected, and I'm glad to know, there were male supporters of suffrage. And there was also a delegation of African-American women from Howard University. So now the parade also, of course, as any parade must, included marching bands, mounted brigades, heralds, I believe that's trumpet players, an elaborate tableau representing progress. I would have loved to have seen a visual of that. And again, numerous floats. Now, again, 5,000 people marching, mostly women and some male supporters, and quite a diverse array of people, too. Over 500,000 people in Washington, D.C. came out to watch the parade. Now, I'm guessing, as I'm reading that, I'm guessing, knowing what women's place was in society back then, I'm guessing that a lot of them weren't watching with approval. They were not happy about this, and that is indeed the case. Over 500,000 people poured into the Capitol streets, and quickly things became quite dangerous. Some of the more hostile spectators were verbally and physically harassing toward the marchers, and apparently the Washington police failed to restore order, and over 200 of these brave marchers, again, mostly women, needed to be treated at local hospitals for a variety of injuries. Apparently, none of them were serious, which is almost surprising. So, of course, as would be expected, the next day, the parade did make national headlines. The New York Times described it as, quote, one of the most impressively beautiful spectacles ever staged in this country. Oh, you gotta love the New York Times, always a step ahead of the game. Along with its praise for marchers, the press heaped contempt on the violent spectators and outrage on the authorities who had failed to keep public order. Contributions and new volunteers poured into the congressional campaign. This is the congressional campaign to move women's suffrage forward. So, very interesting. Again, you never know when the right moment might be to tip the balance in favor of justice, in favor of equality, in favor of moving forward on a critical social issue. I think about the Occupy movement, and I think, and again, the Occupy movement was very, very short-lived, and that is unfortunate in some ways, but maybe that's the way it was supposed to be. One thing about the Occupy movement was that when the police started cracking down, and again, I might even say cracking heads, when folks were stranded on the Brooklyn Bridge in droves, hundreds being arrested, I think over 700 arrested, the general public took notice. And again, looking back at our own civil rights struggle, one thing that caused public support to shift strongly in the direction of voting rights for African Americans, equality for blacks in the South, was the repressive brutality that came after them from law enforcement. That helped the cause. You don't like to have to admit that, but yeah, that certainly helped the cause. And I look at the Salt March in 1930. Gandhi led the Salt March, 240 miles from his ashram in central India to the coast, to Dundee, where they engaged in an act of civil disobedience by merely lifting salt from the ocean, defying the British law against Indians making their own salt. Again, because salt had to be controlled by the government, because that was the way the government could tax it and achieve revenue. So that happened. And then the next day, people all over India making salt in the streets of Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, Bangalore, you name it. Every single place in India, people were making salt. The British started arresting. Now, what really tipped the scales in terms of public opinion in favor of the Indian independence movement, in this instance, was when over 1,000 Indians lined up at the gates of the salt factory I'm blanking on the name of where it was, but also in Western India. They lined up at the gates, and one by one, well, in lines of 5 or 10 or so, would march into the gates, without ever resisting any attack, only to be clubbed down by guards of the salt mine. And they were clubbed down brutally. I mean, there were women and other medical professionals waiting with stretchers to haul them away to try to tend to their wounds. I believe some may have died. Certainly there were incredible injuries. It was the brutality against the marchers in India in this case, in previous examples against the suffragettes, against the civil rights strugglers here. It was the brutality that ended up mobilizing public opinion on the side of those people. Now, again, what I'm saying may be unpopular, because what I'm saying is sometimes it's violence that gets people riled up to the point where they come around to supporting the right thing to do. I guess that's just human nature. It's unfortunate that that has to happen, but it is a reality if you look at so many of these struggles, including the one we mark this week, the 100-year anniversary of the great women's suffrage march in Washington, D.C., again, that led to many acts of violence, 200 women being not just women, but male supporters as well, being hospitalized or treated for injuries because of the response of some in the 500,000 crowd watching the parade who were outraged that women should be so uppity as to demand something as absurd as the right to vote. Anyway, folks, it's a great day to remember. And again, I think of these. I'm thinking of marches a lot more often because of the organizing, involved in putting together a 1,000-person march from the West Coast to Washington, D.C., demanding climate action. Again, go to my. We have a Facebook page for that now. It's called the Great March for Climate Action. Be one of the first 100 people to like that page. There will be a website running soon. There is an account established to accept donations. We are moving forward with this one step at a time, so to speak. And sometime later this year, we'll begin the actual process of recruiting and identifying folks who are going to join this march. So do check that out, folks. That's on Facebook. It's called the Great March for Climate Action. And I tell you, there's more to talk about on this because I'm amazed at how many different ways in which marches have been used. And we'll talk about some of those in the future. But we got other business to cover today, folks. Josh Mandelbaum is in the studio with me. Josh is with the Environmental Law and Policy Center. He's formerly a staffer with, he was with the Vilsack administration for a while. He's a graduate of Brown University, I believe.
Yep.
I know you went to Brown University. I'm thinking you graduated.
I did.
You did. Good for you. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So the Environmental Law and Policy Center does some great work, and we want to cover a little bit of ground both in the realm of renewable energy, but also water quality. So tell us first what is your take on the discussion about renewable energy right now?
Well, we're in a great place in terms of renewable energy. There's a lot of potential, and we're at the point where people are seriously looking at renewable alternatives. And yesterday we just had our solar, the Iowa Small Wind and Solar Energy Trade Association had their day of action at the Capitol.
Really?
And had an opportunity to talk with legislators. And
now, is there any specific legislation relevant to that?
There are a number of bills from sort of small pieces to larger pieces. So last year, the legislature passed in a bipartisan fashion a solar tax credit.
Oh, yes, I remember that. How much was that again?
So the solar tax credit was up to $1.5 million in tax credits, done at a clip of $3,000 for a residential project or up to $15,000 for a commercial project.
Okay.
And that's...
Have many people and individuals, small businesses taken advantage of that?
Yes. So we've started to see folks take advantage of it. And so a small legislative change would make that tax credit a little bit more useful. So okay. Senator Bolcom has introduced a bill that would, one, if there are any unused funds of that $1.5 million, allow those funds to roll over so that they're still used for solar tax credits rather than go back into the general fund.
Now, when you say small tax change, everybody should want to know the details. Republican lawmakers, some of them are naturally inclined to be very suspicious, but what are we looking at in terms of the tax change? Is it really a small one? Is it?
So yes, that change would be just what I said. Instead of, so say in the first year, because a tax credit's designed to help catalyze the industry. Okay. And there are a lot of things that need to happen because you need more installers, you need more time for consumers to get comfortable with this idea. They see solar on their neighbor's house. They see solar when they drive to the store because it's on more resident or more commercial buildings. They get more comfortable with it, but you need some time to grow. So what this would do, it wouldn't change the amount in any way. It wouldn't change things from, it would still be $1.5 million a year that would be allocated. It would just say if in year one, not all of that $1.5 million is allocated, instead of that money reverting back to the general fund, that would then carry forward and could be used in next year's tax credit. Because it's capped, if we have growth like some other states that have additional policies, we'd run through that tax credit very quickly.
Yeah. And again, the interest in solar is growing. It does seem to be increasing significantly.
It is. It's increasing all over the country. There's some states that are doing much better than others. I mean, if you look at a state like New Jersey, for example, is one that I like to cite because their solar resource isn't as good as Iowa's, but they're installing hundreds of megawatts of solar a year. So that's not
right.
I mean, that Iowa is capable of installing that type of solar if we have the right policies in place to support it, and we build our solar infrastructure.
So who's opposed? Who's against this?
Well, we think the tax credit piece is going to be relatively easy.
Even in the Iowa House?
We're hopeful, but because part of, and I haven't got to the second change, but the second change is perhaps a little more significant, but also a small change. And that would allow one taxpayer to claim multiple credits. So that would primarily affect taxpayers that have multiple locations. So businesses that have multiple locations. So for example, in Iowa, you have a business like Come and Go that now Come and Go, as they expand and they build new convenience stores, every one of their new stores, they build solar ready.
Is that true?
Yep, that's
Really?
true. So with their new
Who knew?
canopies,
And what about Casey's and Quick Trip and?
I don't know about that.
All right.
I do know that Come and Go, they've got a sustainability officer.
Wow, did not know that.
And they're ready to go, and they have operations outside of just Iowa. So they're building solar in other states where there are policies that are more supportive and that make it economically feasible.
Yeah.
Hy-Vee, for example, at their new Urbandale store, installed solar and has electrical vehicles charging stations that are powered by solar energy.
Now, Come and Go, that's the Krause family, correct?
That's the Krause family.
That's the Krause family, who are also tend to be fairly generous to Republican candidates. Well, I would think that would give them some lobbying clout on this issue.
It might. And on top of that, it's a way that this is not just about, renewable energy is forward-thinking, and it's going to help businesses as well. And particularly, it's not always progressive, what we consider progressive businesses, but businesses who are looking at energy in a serious way and looking to the future about how we as a country handle energy.
Right.
So nationwide, you have companies like Walmart. Walmart's installed 65 megawatts of solar energy on its stores.
Yeah, I'll still never shop there. I don't know how many local businesses can do the same thing, but if the right incentives are there, local businesses can do that as well, I'm sure.
Exactly. It's not to say that you ignore the other concerns that you might have with Walmart, but you recognize that that's an example where a business is doing the right thing and helping that industry grow.
Right.
And I'm sure they're
Fair enough.
And I'm sure they're not just doing that because, Walmart's not a company that would do anything that wouldn't also help their bottom line. So that example,
they've made that clear over the years.
That example illustrates exactly how, economic solar energy can be and what the opportunity is out there.
Yeah, good point. And we need to ramp up, and we need to ramp up fast and deep. This needs to grow at a rate that we've not seen. And wind energy in Iowa has really taken off. Yep. We need to see that happen around the country, and we need to see it happen everywhere with solar as well.
Yeah. For example, we've got almost 5,000 megawatts of wind energy in Iowa.
About 20% of our, maybe 25% of our generation is wind.
Yes, it's close to that, and we can be producing significantly more wind in this state too. Mm-hmm. And it's a question of having the policies that allow people to do more distributed, small-scale wind projects, so that if you want to put a turbine up at your farm, or if you're a community college and you want to have a turbine or two that, one, fits with your education mission, but also your values and also helps offset some of your energy costs, we need the policy infrastructure in place to support that.
Or especially with the Iowa legislature in session, you could install a wind turbine in the House, one in the Senate, with all the hot air being generated there. Who knows what kind of energy production you'd get out of that.
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that one.
That's right. It's my job to be mischievous. Excuse me, folks. We're talking with Josh Mandelbaum with the energy. Let me try it again. The Environmental Law and Policy Center. There we go. Getting my acronyms mixed up. And you're welcome to call the program if you're listening live. It's 244-0077 or toll free 855-244-0077. If you're listening on KHOI in Ames, this is a rebroadcast of Tuesday's Fallon Forum, which can be viewed and listened to live on the Fallon Forum website every Monday through Friday from noon until 1 o'clock. Before we switch gears here, Josh, to the issue of water quality, let me get your take on a couple breaking things. We see there is, Obama's made a few appointments, and one is the proposed administrator for the EPA. Again, Lisa Jackson is the presently in that position. Obama is appointing Gina McCarthy, and she's described by leading environmental groups as this quote is from the Audubon Society. Exactly the kind of leader the country needs to make historic progress on climate change solutions. That is very encouraging. Does that mean she's going to have a rocky road to hoe in the Senate in terms of confirmation? Any feel for that?
Well, I think this is a strong appointment by the administration. And from what I've been reading, it sounds like there are going to be some U.S. senators who use this as an opportunity to push back on the administration, particularly some of the actions that they've been taking on the regulatory side at EPA. So it could be a challenging nomination,
right.
But I think it's certainly a nomination that's in line with what we've seen from the administration thus far, and it's encouraging in the sense that
you mean on environmental on agencies and department heads that are relevant to energy and the environment.
Yeah,
because a lot of Obama's appointees have been very disappointing to those of my political persuasion.
Yes, well, I was going to say in terms of the set of policies that this administration has pursued, and that certainly during the election and when there was significant pushback on actions that EPA has taken, I think this appointment represents an affirmation of those actions and a willingness to hopefully continue with the steps that we need to.
Well, yeah, and to me, I'm getting strong mixed messages from the Obama administration on climate change. On the one hand, we see this appointment. We also hear him talk very boldly about the administration taking action if Congress fails to do anything. I mean, his language on climate change is strong, but then he also talks about, with some pride about the increased amount of oil drilling we've seen under his administration. The continuing to authorize new permits for drilling offshore, and now who knows where the Keystone Pipeline decision is going for sure, but it looks really possible, probable even, given the State Department report saying, hey, no environmental damage here. It looks really probable the Obama administration is going to approve that pipeline, and there are plenty of scientists who are deeply concerned about that. And so back to the issue of solar energy, again, with all the things that are happening and all the potential there, is there any way to make the case that, no, we don't need this pipeline? We have so much else in the pipeline, in the energy pipeline, that is renewable, that we can hang our hat on that option and keep moving forward in that direction?
Well, certainly as an organization, the way we approach energy issues is we emphasize the clean alternatives. We emphasize we need strong energy efficiency programs, and we should be doing everything we can on the energy efficiency side, because that represents a win-win all the way around. It's good for customers who you are helping implement energy efficiency, and that goes from residential all the way up to industrial customers who we can, businesses are going to do better if they're able to be more energy efficient and spend less of their budget on energy expenses. So we emphasize do energy efficiency first.
Right.
That's the most cost-effective form of energy generation.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
As we see renewables expanding, the more we expand our renewables, the stronger the infrastructure, the more viable that alternative is.
Well, folks, I got to go to a break here shortly, but I do want to, again, invite folks to call 244-0077. 244-0077. We'll take one call before we go to a break. Josh, you've got a headset right next to you there. Yeah, that means Frank from Des Moines, Elvis's love child, on the phone with us. Frank, I'm sure you're a big lover of solar energy.
Well, Ed, I think if it's a voluntary thing, it's just darn fine.
As a voluntary thing?
Yeah. If somebody wants to do something voluntarily, that's great.
Okay, so you would also be in favor of getting rid of all the tax breaks for oil companies?
Well, I don't know. I guess electric, according to statistics, said they get more, energy tax breaks than oil.
Who does?
Wind.
No, not
wind
true.
Turbines.
Josh? What do you know about that? That sounds totally wrong to me. Not just because Frank said it either.
It's a measurement piece, and if you focus on, for example, the type of incentive, so you see wind with a production tax credit incentive, you might be able to cherry pick a specific example here or there, but on the whole, oil and gas companies get all sorts of subsidies.
Well, let me throw one at you today that I don't know all the specifics on, but I know it's happened. Somewhere in the 1970s, after our gold system quit backing money, somewhere along the line, our money got tied to oil production, and it's called the petrodollar. Because mysteriously,
I've not heard of this, Frank.
When our oil prices go down, the strength of our dollar comes back. Now, it's logical that you have to have something. You have to have something. I don't know what it is, but you have to have something to back your currency, or your monetary system is going to collapse. It's reasonable that black gold took over for real gold.
Well, I would say that would make it fool's gold, because it's not a renewable resource. It's going to dry up, and the consequences of what happens when we burn so much of it, not very pretty. The parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere right now is way over the 350 parts per million that scientists recommend as the threshold.
If it is true, and I don't have any reason to disbelieve that it's not the case, if you eliminate fossil fuel out of the equation, and everybody's got their own little solar panels and wind turbines up in their yard producing their own energy, what's going to back the monetary system and make our money of any value?
Chickens. Frank, thanks for the call.
All right.
Josh, any final comment on that element of our conversation before we take a short break?
No, we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Frank, you got the last word, you devil. Oh, gosh. Never let that happen again, Maddie. Okay, folks, I want to thank Josh Mandelbaum. He's going to stick around for a little bit more conversation. We're going to switch gears to water quality. I want to thank Gateway Market for sponsoring this segment of our show. Gateway is at 20th and Woodland. They're a locally owned grocery store that keeps their money in the local community. And not just a grocery store, but a fantastic cafe, breakfast, lunch, and supper. I've been having supper there frequently, and I tell you, it's a great deal. It's not just great quality, it's a great deal economically. Dinner for two with a bottle of wine, and it's a again, wonderful meal. Check them out, folks. Again, not just for those purposes, but for catering as well. That's Gateway Market and Cafe at 20th and Woodland. Good food and great community. We'll be back in a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins. Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait, howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
Community CPA is the 15th largest CPA firm in Iowa, providing audit, tax, and accounting services. Community CPA specializes in international tax treaty and double taxation avoidance among countries and states. 9 dedicated, experienced, hardworking staff are the company's foundation, and their compassion towards every client is the secret behind Community CPA's success. At Community CPA, you can expect quality service year-round. Call 288-3188. Community CPA, 3816 Ingersoll. Experience the difference.
This is Dr. Holding of the Story County Veterinary Clinic. For 15 years, we have been spaying and neutering feral cat groups at affordable prices. Wild cats destroy game birds and songbirds. A single female cat can produce over 4,000 kittens in 7 years. The shelters are full, so unwanted kittens will be put to sleep. Your cats will stay home and stay healthy. Call us for all your dog and cat needs at the Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30, 1 mile east of Interstate 35. 515-232-8766.
Since 1994, Sid's Catering has graced Des Moines area events with quality service and rave reviews. Owner Sid Cohn's culinary career began with a Northeast Iowa vacation home for international clientele. Sid earned a Bachelor of Science in Hotel Restaurant Management and was the assistant clubhouse manager at Des Moines Golf and Country Club. Sid has a passion for fresh, local products and offers a wide range of options, including vegan, gluten-free, and ethnic. Mention the Fallon Forum when you book your breakfast or lunch event and get 10% off. Contact Sid's Catering at 208-2091. That's Sid's Catering at 208-2091.
Local farms, global flavor. That's the secret to Hawk's growing popularity. The best meals begin with the best ingredients, and 90% of Hawk's ingredients come from local farms. In addition to seasonal fruits and vegetables, Hawk features grass-fed beef and lamb, and pasture-raised chicken and duck, all raised without hormones, steroids, or cages. The coffee is fair trade, locally roasted, and Hawk's House liquors come from right here in Iowa. Hawk's owners go the extra mile, composting organic waste and recycling. For more information or to make reservations, visit hawktable.com. That's HOQ table.com.
It's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
From
from the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey folks, that's Max Wellman, and that's Tom Ahart in the news today. Tom Ahart, of course, one of the 3 finalists for the Des Moines Public Schools superintendent position. He's been the interim superintendent for a while. This will be interesting to see where this goes. They're interviewing a couple other candidates, one from Alaska, the other one from Washington, D.C. I don't know, folks. I just like to think we ought to be saying buy local. Here's a guy who's been in the district for a while, knows it. The board thought highly enough of him to appoint him to the interim position. Yeah, we'll see where this goes. It's been interesting because there's been an air of secrecy surrounding the board's deliberations, and a lot of us open government types aren't real happy with that. But at any rate, the whole thing should be resolved in the near future, and that'll be nice to have that out of the way. What probably won't be resolved anytime soon is Iowa's water quality. It is a mess, folks. As you well know, we have more contaminated waterways in this state than you can shake a stick at. We have the situation so bad, the EPA is threatening to come in and take over. Josh Mandelbaum is with me. His organization, the Environmental Law and Policy Center, are one of the many groups that are working on water quality. Welcome back, Josh. And what exactly is your take on this really, really bad situation with our water quality?
Well, we've got a long way to go. And what we're doing now and what we've been doing just won't cut it. We need to take more aggressive action. And it starts from just the way our policymakers have a tendency to talk about water quality issues. If you look at the way the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy was rolled out, there was a focus on Gulf hypoxia and the consequences in the Gulf of Mexico.
Which is important. Which
is absolutely important. It's very important, but it's not the type of focus that's going to motivate Iowans to act. And they're the same things that would motivate Iowans to act and would have an impact here would also have an impact on Gulf hypoxia. So we need to start talking about this problem in a way that you certainly would appreciate. You emphasize the local,
right.
And we should be emphasizing the local aspects of this problem.
Wait, what's the cost to cities for having to clean water? And then when I say cost to cities, I mean cost to local property taxpayers.
Yeah.
What's the cost to folks who, might not? I mean, I don't know of any. Are there many instances of folks getting sick from drinking water that has not been properly treated, or swimming in water that they swallow and then get sick from that? I don't know, but when you're advised not to swim in the water, that should be an indication we've got a problem right there.
Absolutely, it's an indication, and there are a lot of these indicators that Iowans are very familiar with. They know that they don't enjoy boating on a lake that's clogged with algae, and that's a result of our nutrient runoff.
It's not just an impediment to enjoyment; it's an impediment to the actual act of boating.
Yes.
You can get pretty clogged up with that stuff.
It's an impediment in lots of ways. And it's certainly when you see that type of algae, you don't want your kids jumping in that water and swimming in that water. You don't want to do that yourself. And there are health risks associated with it.
Well, it seems we have a governor who is wanting to shift the focus of water quality management from its traditional location in the Department of Natural Resources to the Department of Agriculture. And I mean, what a lot of us think is behind that is a shift away from focusing on cleanness and focusing instead on letting farmers do whatever they want. That's what a lot of people are concerned about. That seems to be the intention behind that shift.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, if you look at the nutrient reduction strategy again, which is something that's sort of framing the debate for better for worse, and that's something that the Department of Agriculture led. One of the critiques of that plan is there's absolutely no accountability.
Right.
They start with the voluntary plan, but they don't even tell you, okay, what voluntary actions are going to be taken, by when, who's accountable for making sure those actions happen. So that's a piece of the strategy that needs to be fleshed out.
I mean, it does seem to me, too, that if we continue in that direction, the EPA is almost certainly going to take over management of our water quality. I would rather that didn't happen. I would rather it didn't have to happen.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we saw when the EPA made comments on the nutrient reduction strategy, they issued a press release that was complimentary of, okay, the state's taking, we were encouraged by the attention being given to this issue.
Right.
But then if you actually read the comments, there were pieces where on a key piece, numeric nutrient criteria, the EPA's comment was, this plan does not reflect EPA's current thinking on this matter.
Right.
Which was code for you're not doing what the Clean Water Act requires. You're not doing what our guidance has required.
It was somewhat less subtle than code, but it was a clear indication that higher authorities are pretty unhappy with the way we are managing our water, and it ought to change. Anyway, I'm really glad you guys are working on it. I know you're not the only group, but again, I think your organization does fine work, and I appreciate you taking the time to visit with our audience.
Happy to do so, and appreciate your giving us this audience.
All right, folks, Josh Mandelbaum with the, I don't know why I have trouble with the acronym, Environmental Law and Policy Center. There we go, I got it out. Folks, thanks again for joining us, Josh. Folks, we're going to switch gears here and talk with Fred Van Loo with Fred, you wear so many hats again. I know you're with Amos. I know you're also working on restorative justice, and you're also formerly with the Polk County Attorney's Office.
Correct.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the organization you are representing here today, and let's kick off that as the. I want to talk about juvenile justice,
sure.
But let's start with a little bit of background about the hats you wear.
Well, I retired. As you know, Ed, about 2.5 years ago from the county attorney office. I was a bureau chief there for a number of years, and assumed, I wanted to do some work in the area of conflict resolution.
Right.
Started taking graduate school classes out east on conflict transformation, and really did not think I would circle back around to restorative justice, which I had been doing that work for a long time, but became concerned for a number of reasons. One was the reading of Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. And
The New Jim Crow?
The New Jim Crow. It's the, for those Unitarians in the audience, it's the national book read of the year for the Unitarian Universalist. And it's being read by a lot of people, criminologists, sociologists, people in and outside the system. And it basically takes a hard look at our criminal justice system and really our system of mass incarceration. You may or may not know, but beginning with Reagan's war on drugs in the early 80s, at the time that war started, if you call it that, we had 300,000 people incarcerated in the United States.
It's mostly a war on the poor.
Not just the poor. The war on the poor, the war on minorities, war on blacks. We've got 2.3 million people incarcerated now. So
2.3 million.
A 500% increase, Ed, in 30 years.
And that is, I believe that's the largest percentage of any population incarcerated in any country in the world.
Far and away. Far and away.
I mean,
more than
think about that. I mean,
North Korea, more than Russia,
Iran.
More than South Africa, more than Iran.
Think of all the countries that we feel are doing a lousy job in civil rights and in civil liberties, and look at how many people we've got in prison. 2.3 million.
And if you look at the arrest statistics, I mean, the arrest statistics actually for juveniles have been going down, and either going down in different states or remaining relatively flat for adults. So we have this relatively stable arrest rate, but this huge increase in prosecution and incarceration rates. And so it's driven by a change in philosophy, change in policy. It's not driven by crime. And so Michelle Alexander is waking a lot of us up to, what is going on? Who's benefiting by this? Who's being...
because some folks would say, well, we have 2.3 million people in prison because there are a lot of bad Americans out there and they deserve to be in prison. But you're saying, based on your experience and based on what commentators like Miss Alexander are indicating, that's not the case.
There are people who we need to be safe from, okay? But
and they're not all in the U.S. Senate.
But good point. But is incarceration in a penal facility necessary? I mean, that's really the question. And more and more people look at this. Even people, on the that are fiscally conservative. When I say even, it makes sense that they would be. The fiscal conservatives are looking at this mass incarceration issue from the standpoint of a waste of tax dollars.
Well, I think some Republicans look at this issue as a way to. They look at the number of people in prison and they realize how many of them are probably struggling with their spiritual identity. And, there have been groups formed that have focused on trying to combat the...
Sure, you have Prison Fellowship,
Prison
Chuck Colson.
and Justice Fellowship,
right,
yes.
Justice Fellowship.
Yeah, they combat the issue from the point of view of these folks need healing, not merely punishment.
Sure.
And again, they have a very narrow definition of how that works, but it's a lot better than just locking them away and throwing away the key.
Well, so you have that group, primarily Republicans, but not exclusively, and then you have the group that are just saying, this just doesn't make sense from a dollar standpoint. We're spending billions of dollars a year, and what are we getting? What's the return on our money? And so that's the discussion that isn't playing out too well. I've been involved in restorative justice since 1991. Restorative justice is just it's a different paradigm, a different way of looking at how we respond to crime in our communities.
Yeah. How would you define, or maybe better yet, give us some examples of restorative justice?
Well, first I would say the present system, the people in the restorative justice field and other related fields would say that the present system is a retributive justice system. It's about punishment. Okay?
Retribution. Yes.
Retribution, punishment. Whereas restorative justice is about reparation, repair. Okay, so
making sure the victims are compensated to the extent that they can. I mean,
not just compensation though. Compensation, absolutely, but it goes beyond compensation. How do you deal with the emotional harm, the scars that a victim oftentimes incurs as a result of the intrusion by an offender? And what I began to see as a prosecutor years and years ago was that the locking up of an offender ultimately does not meet the psychological, emotional needs of a victim. And so what we found out,
well, in some cases they might, but that's not necessarily a healthy thing.
Yeah.
If you feel better just because somebody is, locked up, I mean, what is?
Sometimes you feel better because you feel safe. Okay, you think, oh, this person can't do this any longer. Okay, but what I saw over and over and over again was the need that victims realized that they had to sit across the table, like you and me, to talk about what did this crime do to me? What did this offense do to me?
I did that on several occasions when I lived in the inner city. I lived there for 19 years. Yeah. We had an occasional prostitution problem.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, and just to be candid too, I think eventually the solution to the problem of prostitution plaguing certain low-income neighborhoods is to legalize prostitution. But that's another conversation.
That's another conversation.
What happened here that was favorable was that we were when a prostitute was arrested, part of their sentencing involved sitting down with people from the neighborhood.
That's right.
Getting to hear why it was really bothersome to us to be woken up in the middle of the night by noises from the street. Why it was really
finding condoms on the
yeah. I mean, I had we raised two small kids in the inner city, and it didn't make you feel real good to go out and find a used condom on the sidewalk where your kid was playing. Yeah, and there were plenty of other reasons why prostitution in our neighborhoods is deplorable. But a lot of the folks who felt they had to engage in that activity for one reason or another had never heard that side of the story. So what you're saying, I think, is very true.
Well, that's a great. That's an offense that we could spend an hour talking about.
Probably.
But the questions arise: what is an appropriate response? Okay. The one response you're talking about is having the offender hear from the neighborhood. How is this affecting the neighborhood? How is this affecting the quality of our life? How is it affecting our property values? Okay, that's one thing. So that's a response that our system normally doesn't provide to to victims. And the typical response is, okay, probation, court cost, A, B, C, D, and E. And I think just to pull back a little bit, I think the one thing that the Amos effort is aimed at is just generating a conversation within the community and hopefully engaging the justice system professionals in what makes sense, what really works, what research is out there that should direct our public policy. That's not happening. You got all kinds of brilliant people out there that do incredible research. The findings suggest that, for example, it hurts kids to detain them. Okay?
Right.
When you put a kid in detention, it causes harm.
So,
okay? So is our public policy responding to that research?
Right. Well, and again, we had a Supreme Court ruling last year.
Yeah, the Miller case.
Right, that was very encouraging. That said, and you can probably articulate it better than I, but basically that kids who are, tried as adults may not be given a term of life in prison without parole.
They may be, but you can't statutorily say that it happens in every case. Basically, what that U.S. Supreme Court case said is you can't just have a blanket statute that says every juvenile goes to prison for life. Okay, you have to allow some discretion on the part of the sentencing judge.
Okay.
So what's our response in Iowa? Well, we've got the legislature now saying, "Oh, okay. Well, we're going to do what Governor Branstad did on 38 or 39 cases, and that is the sentence is a mandatory minimum 60 years.
Yeah,
no parole until 60 years.
That is so wrong because it is
it's a life sentence.
It's a life sentence, exactly. Yeah. It's just a way of getting around the spirit of the law.
That's right.
By recognizing the letter of it. But so the House Republicans are proposing to keep it at 60. They actually put it in statute. They want to put it in statute.
Right.
And the Senate Democrats, what's their counter plan?
It's either 45 or 50. When I first looked at it about a month ago, it was 45. Somebody told me a couple of days ago it was 50.
So is that any better? Is that much different?
Not much. Yeah, let's say you've got a 16-year-old who's convicted of first-degree murder. By the time when it's all said and done, he's 18. Okay, add 50 to that before he can even be considered by the parole board. He's 68 when the parole board first looks at his case. It's a life sentence.
It's a life sentence.
Right. Right.
So I mean, what the Senate is proposing. And you think there tends to be a little bit more progressive leadership in the Senate?
Yes, right. Yeah. They're 10 or 15 years less.
That's not progressive.
It's not progressive.
Again, that's not giving any discretion to the courts, to the judge, to the jury.
Yeah.
Is there any hope for infusing any conversation into that? Any sense into that conversation that might?
Well, it's going to be interesting because the Supreme Court is also looking at the issue, and it's my understanding
the Iowa Supreme Court.
The Iowa Supreme Court.
Okay.
So it's my understanding that that the legislature really would rather that the Supreme Court dealt with it, and then it's my understanding that the Supreme Court would rather that the legislature dealt with it.
Nobody wants to deal with it.
People don't want to deal with it.
Well,
That's
is
right,
it because it's so common for candidates for political office to use crime, votes on crime, positions on crime, as a glitzy campaign brochure against your opponent. I mean,
it's an easy sell.
I've had that happen to me before.
Right.
I was accused of being the best friend sex offenders ever had by Congressman Boswell in brochure after brochure.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've seen that happen many, many times. So I think a lot of it is lawmakers and others are skittish to take a stand because they know from experience that it will somehow be twisted and used against them. Right. In their next political campaign.
Well, so that gives me a good segue, if you don't mind, to what Amos is trying to do.
Okay.
Amos isn't against any particular public official, any particular judge, any particular candidate. Amos wants to raise the level of awareness of these issues. So how do we do that? They're teaching classes on justice and on restorative justice. They've held some large meetings. They're training people to be what they call courtroom watchers, just to sit in a courtroom silently, take notes, so that they can get some understanding what justice looks like at the Polk County Courthouse.
That's good.
They're training, and they've trained 80 people so far, including 25 undergrads over at Drake. So that's a big deal. Okay, people are noticing that citizens are interested in what justice looks like at our courthouse. Okay. Yeah. They're training people to be mediators in our schools so that the schools would see, wait a minute, perhaps if we could resolve this within the school, we don't need to involve a school resource officer who is trained as a peace officer to remove from the school, and the removal generally is to the detention center, which starts the kid down the path of being in the system. Okay.
Right.
So I think, and you're a student of democracy, and I would ask you the question, what would you do if you were designing a plan to educate the electorate about all the nuances around our justice delivery system?
Well, the first thing I'd do is to encourage people to throw out the paradigm of smart on crime versus, well, no, tough on the paradigm of tough on crime versus weak on crime, because that's the paradigm that's always
But how
presented.
do you educate them? How do you get them to throw it out?
You shift to smart on crime versus dumb on crime, and under the category of dumb on crime is also expensive on crime.
Sure.
And we have a system right now that is unsustainable.
But how do you do that? How do you convince the guy who goes into the voting booth every 2 years, or the woman every 2 years, to make decisions based on smart on crime?
Yeah. Well, you have to be outspoken. I mean, again, when I ran for Congress and Leonard Boswell put out, just ridiculous attack ads on me, implying that I was the friend of sex offenders, and he put my campaign office's number on there to call. People did call. We had about 100 calls, and they were all like, "We're outraged at how ridiculous this attack is." So I think people are starting to come around. That was a few years ago too. I hope more and more as time goes on, as people see the loss of life, the lack of any real willingness to address the victims' concerns, and the incredible cost, and just again the fact that we are a nation of 300+ million with 2.3 million people in prison.
Well, and those 2.3 million, and that's at any one time.
Right.
95% are going to be back out, right?
Right.
And so what's going to be their status when they get back out? Are they going to be able to vote? Are they going to be able to get meaningful employment?
Not in Iowa.
Are they going to get public housing? Are they going to be able to get school loans?
Yeah, you can get a gun more easily than you can get your right to vote restored here in Iowa.
Yeah, that's absolutely
crazy.
Right. So we're creating this, and this is what the new Jim Crow, why it's a must-read, is we're putting people, in a sense, on reservations when they get out of prison.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Well, hey, Fred, thank you so much for joining us, folks. Fred Van Loo, and again, the name of your organization?
It's the Center for Restorative Justice Practices, and then I also coordinate justice efforts for AMOS, which is a Mid-Iowa organizing strategy.
And again, this has been a lifelong passion of yours. You were with the county attorney's office.
Well, not until I was about 5 years old, probably.
Okay, well, almost lifelong minus the first 5 years. I want to ask, what really bad thing did you do when you were 5? That
I read Clarence Darrow when I was 9, and
wow, this is lifelong.
Yeah, pretty.
I
much
called
lifelong.
that right.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, and folks, stick around. We'll again, if you're listening to the show on KHOI, I thank you for tuning in every Wednesday at 4 o'clock on 89.1 FM. A rebroadcast, there we go, of Tuesday's Fallon Forum, which is broadcast live Monday through Friday at 12 to 1 on the Fallon Forum website. I want to thank all of our sponsors. I want to thank in particular Hawk Restaurant. Hawk is at East 5th and Walnut. An amazing venture. This is an operation that Suman and Cynthia Hawk have put together. She is a DMU student, and he is a chef extraordinaire with a passion for local foods. 90% of the food served at Hawk comes from local sources. That is phenomenal and very commendable. And I tell you, the quality is incredible as well. So check them out for lunch and also for supper. That's Hawk Restaurant at East 5th and Walnut Street in the East Village of Des Moines. I also want to thank Community CPA and Associates. Community CPA is at 3816 Ingersoll Ave. This is the right time of the year, folks, to be thinking about getting your taxes done. I just dropped off my stuff to Yingsa yesterday. Again, if you're just a single person filing a W-2, it's going to cost you only $97 to get your taxes done by high-quality professionals. Again, this Yingsa's firm has done so well. They're now 10th largest in the state. Yingsa will be on this program, by the way, tomorrow, Wednesday, talking about tax and accounting questions, so stay around for that. And give her a shout if you'd like to have your taxes done, again, by high-quality workers. It's 288-3188, 288-3188. Also tomorrow on my program, Cheryl Thomas will be joining us. We're talking about gun violence and some activities coming up here in Central Iowa, excuse me, on that issue. I want to thank Maddie Arrington, my producer, and I want to thank Webcast One Live. We'll be back tomorrow.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the